When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
A milestone moment creates a beautiful memory for years to come. And now's the time to celebrate it with 35% off select pieces at Blue Nile. Blue Nile makes your most valuable moments sparkle with jewelry gifts of the highest quality offered at the best price. You'll also find expert guidance and the level of convenience you'd expect from the world's leading online jeweler. Right now, take advantage of 35% off select pieces at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year. And plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of EPL Market Metrics. Now, ladies and gents, we are nearly on the verge of August, aren't we? The final month of the transfer window. There's moves happening, there's moves being speculated on, and as ever, we'll be looking at the latest moves and seeing, do the stats back up what the fans think? And here to join me as ever to walk through everything is Ben Bocsak. Ben, how are we?
Yeah, I'm very well. How about yourself?
Yeah, good, mate. Sun's out, and literally there's moves happening, isn't there? That's the main thing as well. So, yeah, there's an interesting one this week, Ben. We've got probably a named superstar, a player at a big club, but maybe not too well known, but possibly heading to another big club as well. We've got a youth product, so there's a lot of speculation on, so we'll see what we think about him. And we've got someone who used to be in the Premier League, left, and maybe on his way back by the sounds of it as well. So we've got the full range for you, ladies and gentlemen. So, Villa fans, United fans, West Ham fans, Bournemouth fans, and Palace fans, all different teams, stay tuned for this one. So, Ben, I mean, this is an interesting one for me. We'll start one that will get Villa fans' ears pinned well back. João Felix. I mean, this is a player that's almost feels like a hipster's dream for me. He's always been a big name player. There's no two ways about it at all. And he's been doing big things in football history. He was a huge money move to Atletico Madrid, wasn't he? And at the same time, we've seen him at Chelsea when that didn't work out. We've seen him at Barcelona. And now there's a possibility we might be seeing him at Aston Villa, if rumours are to be believed, because he's back training on his own. It's important to say, Atletico Madrid people, clear that he wants to leave. They don't want him. So it's all about where does he end up. Barca have their cost challenges, as we know as well. So there's a lot of question marks around this player. Now, he feels like he's been around, Ben, for about 50 years, João Felix, but that's not the case. And it's important we talk about what he is rather than what the potential was, the hype was, etc. So, Villa fans, I'm asking you, Ben, stats-wise, João Felix, does this look like a player that is a stardust talent, as people talk about, or is the reality slightly different?
I mean, there's no denying he's an exotic name, isn't he? Like, literally, from a very young age, he's been hyped as one of the biggest talents of this sort of era. And there's also no denying he hasn't lived up to those hypes, that hype at all. I mean, he was sort of labelled on the same level as Mbappe when he was coming through, and he's got nowhere near that. Last season, he didn't really break into Barcelona's starting 11. He only played over just over 1,500 minutes in the league. That's not really a player who's a regular, but in those minutes that he did play, he averaged 0.4 0.4 non-penalty goals per 90, which is a really good return. A goal basically every other game. I think his movement is really intelligent still, but there are some sort of question marks over his overall game. He doesn't really sort of contribute a lot in terms of his distribution or his creative ability, or he's not the kind of player who also go on runs and is really effective at sort of taking on players and beating players. He ranks quite low in all of those metrics. So yeah, there's question marks for me over everything really. Like, what's his best position? What's his best role?
Mm-hmm.
If he goes to Aston Villa, where is he going to play? He's probably like a number 10 is his best profile, just behind the striker. But that kind of position is sort of archaic in the modern game. You don't really see it often. At Villa, they've got obviously two wingers in Diaby and Bailey who are really fast and really intense. If obviously Diaby has been linked with a move to Saudi Arabia, if Felix is coming in to replace him as a winger, then I'm not really sure I see that as a good fit or a good solution. He doesn't have the speed of Diaby, and he doesn't have the sort of take-ons and those kind of things that Diaby provides as well. Aside from obviously his output, I mean the output is similar, but overall I have question marks about this one, to be honest, and especially for the fee that's being talked about. I mean, 51 million is a lot of money, and you're expecting to get a finished player or thereabout, or someone with a very high ceiling and a very high potential. But I think João Felix, that being the age that he is now, is neither of those things yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, like you say, you look at his minutes and it's nothing to really shout home about. Can't pretend he was a regular. I think it's fair to say he wanted to stay at Barcelona. It's just Barca's financial situation and probably his lack of output overall. I mean, on the surface, it's 10 goals and 6 assists, so it's not bad. But like you said, the amount of minutes, if you look at some of his goals, they're when Barca are winning quite comfortably at the same time as well. So it's not like we're talking about a regular match winner for them by any means. Now, Emery and Monchi especially is a savvy operator in the market, as we know, Ben. Price is an interesting one because, like you say, Atletico will want his talk to a lot of reports somewhere around the 50 million mark. Something tells me Villa will look lower, no doubts at all. It's probably a difficult one to answer. What feels like a good sort of price or yardstick for Felix right now?
I think definitely at least sort of get 10 million down and around the 40 million mark. I think you're talking about a decent deal in this market. If you can get him for 35 million or anything below 40, around 35 maybe, then you're talking about a pretty good deal. But like you said, I think Atletico Madrid are quite unlikely to sort of let him go for anything less than 50 because of the amount of money they paid for him. So I don't really see how this is going to work out. Villa might be prepared to make a 50 million offer and to get him at that price, but I think at that price it's quite an overpay for what you're getting, really.
Yeah, it feels like the name more than the stats, Villa fans, anything. And listen, it's an attractive name, so Villa fans will like it, as we know, Ben, and they'll be thinking, could he do a job in the Premier League and also the Champions League? Because he did get a few goals in the Champions League for Barca last season. Do you think there is legs in this one? Do you think in the sense of, and we know how Monchi operates, we're talking a very shrewd operator, do you think Villa will be playing on, can we make this tick over? If we get late in the window, Atletico Madrid know they want to sell the player doesn't want to be there, and obviously the price drives down. Do you think this could be a late one that happens possibly, in the sense of they think, yeah, we'll take him for a certain amount for our Champions League campaign as well? Is that what you think Villa are thinking possibly?
Yeah, I think it will drag on because these type of big names, they tend to not attract so much attention. But then when it gets to the end of the window, because they're big names, a lot of clubs who maybe are feeling the pressure in terms of not having been able to invest enough, they'll think, oh, actually, we'll bring in Felix, we'll have a punt. Maybe he only goes out on loan as well, which happens a lot, and they'll go for it, and they'll at least do some business. I think, when Liverpool brought in Arthur Melo a few years ago, that was a similar sort of business, and I can see Felix going through something similar as well, because of his name, he will attract attention as we get closer and closer to the end of the window.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Villa fans. And listen, if this does happen, it's not about putting on your parade, Villa fans, at all. I think it's just important to say that the metrics on the surface aren't bad. 16 goal contributions isn't bad. But think about the minutes Ben talked about. Is it that great? We're talking the things we're promoted were per 90 more than anything rather than consistent. We know the problems he's had in Madrid. Did okay at Chelsea. Fair to say, okay. But yeah, it's a Champions League campaign. Is he the big name that Villa fans want? We'll have to see on that one. Yeah, we think that'll run late in the window. One that I'm not sure will go as late, and we'll probably butcher this name, Ben, but we're going for it. Nusser Mazraoui, I think it's pronounced. So Moroccan international, Bayern Munich right back as well, 26 years old. Looked like he was on his way, for all intents and purposes, to West Ham. That looked like it was all done. But the agent, Rafael Pimenta, sort of an old protege of Milo Raiola's, sort of snowballed it, torpedoed it, if you want to call it that. And now all the suggestions are that, very much, along with De Ligt, who's trying to steer him towards Manchester United, who are in the market for a right-back. It sounds if they can sell Aaron Wan-Bissaka. There's a lot of dominoes here, Ben, going on already, isn't it? An interesting one. United, because this is what I want to get into with this one. United are on a budget. We know that. We know they made a few signings early, like Yoro, Xerxes. People will look at that. But it very much feels like, with all the talk we're hearing, it might have to be a nightclub style, one in, one out, to balance the books and everything like that. Let's focus on the player, Mazraoui. Stats-wise, Ben, are we talking, is there anything that stands out? Can you see why people could class it as a potential upgrade on Wan-Bissaka to Mazraoui? Is there anything you're thinking, yeah, we could see stats-wise why United are in for him?
Oh, yeah, 100%. If you're just looking at his passing numbers, his distribution is really good. He ranks in the 96th percentile among fullbacks for progressive passes. I think just technically he's a lot better than Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka is a great defender, but I think technically, he's improved a little bit over maybe the last season at United, but he's still, he's got flaws in his game. Mazraoui, I think for me, he's got less flaws. He's always been a really technical player. I think he's sort of, that's one of his biggest assets as a fullback, and he's up there among the best fullbacks in the Bundesliga when it comes to that. So, yeah, for me, he's got a good output going forward as well. Average 0.20 assists, just over, I think 0.20 assists per 90 last season, which is a decent return for a fullback. It's not bad. I think for all of those reasons, obviously United want more output from their fullbacks. So that is going to be important. Obviously, there's the connection to Ajax as well. Erik ten Hag will know him well. He will know how to get the best out of him. That versatility as well. He can play in so many different positions aside from right back as well. He can move into midfield and he can do a lot of other stuff as well. So there's that tactical flexibility. There's just a lot to like. I think this could be a good piece of business for United. But if I do have to sort of ruin the people's excitement. It's the injury record, and I think that's the big elephant in the room. He didn't play too many minutes last season. He had a couple of injuries, a few niggles, and that's been sort of the theme of his Bayern Munich career. Ever since he's gone there, he's had injuries. He even had the World Cup for Morocco. He missed that tournament, majority of the tournament anyway, because of injury, and that's the big question mark for me, because, okay, on paper, if you're looking at just the numbers, the output, yes, United are getting an upgrade on Wan-Bissaka, 100%. But is it really that much of an upgrade if that player is maybe only able to play 18 matches, and then for the rest of them, you have the rest of the 20 games in the Premier League season, you have to play, I don't know, a youngster or the backup option. I think that's what you've got to question there.
Yeah, I think you're right. The injury record, you can't just ignore it at all. And probably that might tell you about the fee, because injuries do blight his career. We can't pretend that, listeners, at all, if you look through United fans as well. Maybe tells its own story about the fee, Ben, because if you took out the injury record, you'd be expecting a hefty fee. But the suggestions are, West Ham had pretty much already agreed it, that even with add-ons around 20 million euros, suggestions it was around sort of 15 million plus 5 million euro add-on. 20 million for that, 20 million euros, does that seem reasonable? I know we should never call 20 million euros a punt, but at top level football, elite football, it's not big money, is it? Does that seem reasonable for the player?
Yeah, based on the injury record, I think that's a sort of fair fee. But again, obviously the injury record is a big question mark. So even spending 20 million, especially with the new Premier League's profit and sustainability rules, it's a lot of money, and I think you have to think about it more wisely. Every penny counts with these new regulations. So you have to think from a data perspective, is that really the best way to spend 20 million? Or maybe there is another right back in the market who has got the output or is performing better and also playing more minutes, or even maybe performing slightly worse than Mazraoui, but playing more minutes. Overall, you're going to get a better deal, for what you want. So I think United are going to have to be a bit careful with this one. It does feel like almost, we've seen with Euro and with Xerxes, United being a new sort of going in a new recruitment direction. This feels like United going back to their old ways and being more opportunistic and sort of looking at the name, looking at where the player is from, and obviously looking at how he's connected to Ten Hag as well.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Rather than actually looking at the raw data and the numbers.
Yeah, it does have a bit of a feel about that, and this isn't to denigrate the player in any way. And there's a lot being made about, naturally, the connection to Rafaela Pimenta, who also is the agent for Matthias de Ligt, isn't it, who United are in for. We've talked before about their relationship with Jorge Mendes and Lenny Yoro, potentially Ugarte still being linked at the same time as well. So it does feel United do, or maybe treading rather data an agent-led path, so to speak. We'll have to see that. Although this seems quite strong and being pushed for by the agent, Ben. The way United were, the way we see things, we even saw Lenny Yoro limping off, Rasmus Højlund limping off, and we know United's injury record from last season. Do you get a feeling this one will happen for the fee being mentioned, United's need for fullbacks or what they want? What does your gut tell you on this one?
I think based on how they've sort of pounced on this deal, I'd be surprised if it doesn't happen now, because they were so keen. And obviously West Ham were kind of in for Wan-Bissaka, so there is the potential of, offloading Wan-Bissaka to West Ham and doing business that way. So I think it's quite possible. Obviously the Ajax connection as well will sort of help, and I think Ten Hag will probably be pushing for it. And that sort of that when a manager pushes for a player like that, no matter what the recruitment team may say or what kind of question marks they might raise, it will be hard to sort of not get the deal over the line now.
Yeah, which is interesting, especially United fans. It seemed like with the whole new recruitment team, Ashworth, Wilcox, everything being bought in, it was stepping away from last season, almost Ten Hag having that recruitment influence. But maybe with this new contract pending and the fact he's staying, maybe it's different. We will have to see. We'll have to see if Mazraoui does end up at Old Trafford. But the suspicion is he probably will by the end of the window. And Ben, this next kid, I mean, it pretty much, I think he's had his medical. We're just waiting for the Bournemouth announcement. And I almost, if you look at football Twitter, which is never a full representation, people, had him go into all sorts. I'm probably getting his name wrong, but Dean Huijsen, I think it's pronounced, the silent J. I mean, this kid, Juventus player, but was on loan at Roma. Technically, it's strange, Spanish international, but came through all the levels with Dutch youth levels, but chose Spain for a country of one of his parents. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I've seen much of this kid, but this kid has been hyped, I think it's fair to say. 3 big reasons, it seems. Number 1, his height. He's very tall. Number 2, his ability to bring the ball out from the back, people are making a big fuss about. And number 3, left-footed centre-back seem to be the order of the day, don't they? The fashionable at the moment. People have seen like Jared Branthwaite and that market that's been going on. And yeah, this is trying not to be disrespectful to any Bournemouth fan that's listening. He's set to end up at Bournemouth. So, Ben, the stats. Are the stats telling us this kid got overhyped and this is his right level? Or are you thinking Bournemouth might just have landed a coup here? What do the stats tell us?
I think perhaps a bit of both, really. I think he's a really talented player. There's real potential there. But he's got quite a small sample size, so you can't read too much into it. And maybe that small sample size, I think it's only 522 minutes last season. It's dissuading the sort of big clubs who, had a sample size of maybe 2,000 or 2,000 to 4,000 minutes last season would be in for him. The likes of Liverpool, who were mentioned, I think, on social media. I'm not quite sure what the sort of how strong the links were, but there's definitely interest and admiration from Liverpool's point of view. However, we know with Liverpool's data and recruitment team, they like to have a long sample size. They really like to sort of see to sort of measure the player's quality and potential over a long period of time. And obviously with Huijsen, that's kind of impossible at this stage. But like you mentioned, there's a lot to like. He attempted over 82 passes for 90. Again, with everything, with all the numbers, we have to stress the small sample size, but it's really impressive stuff. He, like you mentioned, he's really good at bringing the ball out from the back, sometimes stepping into midfield, and he's got a bit of a rocket when it comes to his shooting as well. Like, he scored some stunning long-range goals. I think one in particular, while for Roma last season was very impressive. It gives me like the last sort of Liverpool centre back that I can remember is Daniel Agger, who used to just step into midfield and score some really good goals. Technically he's a great player. He reads the game really well. You can see for his age he's someone who's really smart. There's a couple of question marks that I have, which I think might be cleared up with some more data and a bigger sample size. But For me, he isn't quite the quickest on the eye test when I watch him. He seems like he could if there would be an area where he would struggle is playing in a high line potentially. He only ranked in the 33rd percentile for recoveries, which is sort of a measure of how quick a defender is at tracking back and catching up with their opponents. Like, someone like Virgil van Dijk, who's very quick at doing that, will rank very highly in these metrics. Huijsen does not. I think it's just over 4 recoveries per 90. A really good number is around 8 or 9. That's really high for a centre back. So
yeah,
he's nowhere near that. And aerially as well. You mentioned he's a tall player. I think he's 6'5", so he's a very tall player. But he only wins 56% of his duels.
Wow.
And he doesn't average a lot as well. Like I said, again, small sample size, so difficult to make too many like concrete assessments on it. But at this stage, based on the data that we have available and the minutes he's played, it does feel like for someone who's so tall, 56% is not the greatest. And I think all of that explains, like you mentioned, why he's not going to a Liverpool. He's going to a Bournemouth, where Bournemouth will feel like they can sort of take a bigger punt on his potential, and he's got resale value. Whereas Liverpool, you want the very best. You want the finished article. You're not signing potential as much. So all of that reason sort of explain why Bournemouth are set to win the race for him. And obviously the appeal of they'll probably guarantee him playing more minutes, whereas at Liverpool, I think at this stage it would have been a bit too soon, and he would have realistically been 4th, 5th choice. And as a 19-year-old player, you don't really want to accept that, especially after the sort of half season that he had when he finally broken into senior football and got a taste of what that's like. He won't want to have a lesser role at Liverpool and play less minutes.
No, not at all. And you can understand now, like you say, that the sample size, people, is tiny, which is probably why it's not, if we're honest, a top level club. No disrespect to Bournemouth in that regard. But yeah, a few there, like you say, that's a worrying aerial start, so to speak, his pace to be tested. I mean, it probably explains in a good way, Ben. And Bournemouth, if you think about Bournemouth, it might be a good level. They do some good business. Sabayani was a great buy for them. Your countryman Kirkes done well at left back. So he goes into almost a good defence there as well. It might suit him in that regard as well. I mean, the fee, again, there's add-ons in this, but the fee with the add-ons make it around, the suggestion is the £18.5 million mark. Does that feel about right in the current market for what you're seeing, or bit high, bit low? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that's fair because, like we said, there's a lot to like. There's a lot of potential there. And even though the sample size is small, I think you're paying for that exciting potential. And 18.5 million is a perfectly reasonable amount of money to pay for someone of his talent and his potential.
Yeah, and to be fair, Bournemouth fans, before you thinking this is negative, if he has a good season, it's important to say, and maybe, again, not being disrespectful to Bournemouth, it is a smaller pitch, as we know, isn't it, Ben? It's tighter, so that may suit him more than anything in home games as well. If he has a good season, there's potential already after a year. He's worth double what they've paid for him, isn't he, if he has a good season? So it does seem quite an interesting one. We will have to see. And the final one, a player that as a youngster was in the Premier League, a player that was in the Premier League for Watford. So some may or may not remember the name, Palace fans, Ismaila Sarr. I mean, a young winger, very much sort of broke to prominence in the Premier League, where he scored that double against Liverpool, didn't he, when Watford had that 3-0. Did okay. Always Watford, one of those yo-yo teams for a while, wasn't it? But moved to the continent at Marseille. interesting this, Ben, because now linked with a move back to Crystal Palace, who of course sold Elise. There's question marks around Eze, isn't there, as well? At one point, it's important to say that Liverpool were linked with him for big money. I mean, but we're now talking, and not being disrespectful, he's at Marseille. Sounds like they're quite happy to cash in on him, so to speak, and Palace look to buy him for a certain amount. What do the stats tell us about Ismaila Sarr? Is this well away from this 80, 90-year-old with huge potential, or is there still something there, even despite him being sort of 25 years of age?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I mean, he was supposed to be the next Sadio Mane, and that's why Liverpool were in for him. And I think there was a lot of he was quite exciting in the Premier League, although quite raw. So there was always a question mark about whether he's going to be able to build on that rawness and become a complete player. I don't think he's managed to do that, and maybe that's the reason why he's now being linked with a move for Palace and why Marseille want to get rid. I mean, he only made 15 starts for Marseille in the league, so it was far from a regular. In terms of what you like, he's really fast, and that's always been one of his biggest assets. But is he productive? I'm not so sure. He just as a winger, you want to be able to be quite successful when it comes to attempted take-ons, especially when you're fast. You've got that advantage. You can beat a man easily, in theory, but he wins just over 30% of his attempted take-ons. That's wow. Really low. That's really low. I think he doesn't make the best decisions when it comes to sort of arriving in the box or taking shots and stuff like that. He takes a lot of long-range efforts, which are quite a high risk when it comes from a data point of view. If you're looking at his shot maps, even for FBref, he ranks in the 99th percentile among his positional peers for average distances for his shots. So there are sort of question marks. I mean, he does get 45% of them on target still, which I think is a decent return. But as an attacking player, you want to get at least 50. Really, realistically speaking, 0.24 goals per 90 and 0.19 assists per 90 is nothing special. It's decent. It's okay, especially considering he wasn't starting games a lot of the times. He was coming on and making an impact off the bench. So for Palace, we're talking about quite a low fee for Sarr, and I think at that price range, it could be a bit of a sort of not coup, but it could be a decent signing. He's never going to be a Sadio Mane. I think that you can say that with a certainty now. He was born in 1999, so he's in his mid-20s now. He's never going to have that potential, but could he be a decent sort of fan favourite, maybe even have a cult status at Palace? I think he has potential. He could be a good squad player. I don't think he would be an Olise replacement. I mean, Palace have a really talented, I think, right winger in Jesser and Rak Saiki, who's been on loan at Charlton and kind of had a difficult spell in terms of injuries. If Palace, he's been doing really well at Palace in pre-season. So I don't know if Palace are, I know he's got a lot of interest in him from Championship and even Premier League clubs. I think Southampton have made a bid. I don't know if Palace are thinking of him in the long picture, but if I was Palace, I would give him a chance and take a punt on him and maybe bring in Sarr as his understudy and have them two competing for that Olise role in the team. And I think if that's what they intend to do, then Sarr is a decent signing. He can come in and sort of provide competition and push, I think, Rak Saiki, who I really like, a little bit forward and help him develop his game as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's like you say, when you look at Sarr, it almost feels like what could have been. You do forget that it was only wasn't that many moons ago Liverpool were linked with something like 40 to 50 million, like you say, Sadio Mane, but you look down and there's nothing really. I'm not trying to poo-poo this fans or Palace fans if it does happen, but there's nothing mainly standing out. I suppose the talk is, Ben, it's important to say, the fee. People will be wondering about that. The suggestion is the fee will be around 30 million euros, which if you get them at Tesco, you're talking about 10, 11 million. So it's not, and there's suggestions of add-ons, so we don't know what quite that will bring it up to as well if it does go through. At that price, is this one we are filing under the phrase punt, well and truly?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's not a lot of money to pay in today's game, and I think he's still sort of just reaching his prime. So you're getting a player at his prime, and I think any half decent player nowadays is into his prime and who is sort of quite familiar in like European football will demand that price tag. So yeah, I don't think there's anything overly excessive when it comes to that fee.
Yeah, it feels about right. I did looking at a few reports, I say, with add-ons suggest about 15 million euros, so somewhere close to there. There's David Ornstein even had it a couple of days ago, the decisions there. In principle, it's just things like medical and personal terms. So this one's probably, out of all the ones we're talking, the one that, well, we've got to take David Ornstein above anyone at his word, haven't we, and everything like this. This is the first time we've had one like this, Ben, and we're actually talking about one. And Dean Hudson, we've kind of alluded to that. That's a punt that could come back. We saw on the fence with that. So, do you see this being a success? Okay. Or have you got a bit of a worry about it for Palace fans?
I think I'm actually okay with it, yeah. I think this is a good deal. Like I said, they've got a good young winger with potential in Jesser and Rakasaki. Whether they keep him or not remains to be seen. I hope they do. I hope he's given a chance. And alongside him, those two overall, I think, could replace Olise's sort of output. I mean, we've got to mention, as impressive as Olise was, he didn't play as a lot of minutes. So actually you don't need to replace him that much. I think you can have two players who can play regularly, and but together they'll be able to replace his output. And I think this is a smart buy at that price range. I've got, you're getting a player with Premier League experience, who's done well in the Premier League at times, obviously done really well in the Championship too. So yeah, I've got no problems with it. I think this is a good deal.
Yeah, will be an interesting one to see. And these are the two that look likely then, ladies and gents. Huijsen, who's saying medical, looks like it's just any time to be announced. Sarr looks like it will happen, that he's expected to go through. Mazraoui, yeah, we think it may go through, ladies and gents. Is United chasing a name rather than what the stats tell them in that regard? And we did it at the top of the show, but in terms of the list, João Felix might be a name more than an output, Villa fans, in all honesty, based on what we're seeing, but only time will tell on that one. But there we are, ladies and gents. We are through another 4 players for you on EPL Market Metrics. So all of these we say as ever is Ben, for the time, for the insight, for the output as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
And it will be interesting to see what happens with these players. And on Sunday, the 28th of July, ladies and gents, enjoy the rest of the day, and we will be back next week.
Sports Social Podcast Network.